Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the West Bend Community Memorial Library Board for Tuesday, April 16th. I'm asking for approval of the agenda.
So move.
We have an approval. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have an approval and a second. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to call for an approval of the consent agenda for the library board minutes from February 19th. Also, the approval of the expenditures for February and March due to the fact that we didn't have a March meeting. We're approving February also.
So move.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
Jessica, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Financial reports, Mr. Jim.
Well, we have 2 months in your packet, February and March, and in the interest of time and giving you more relevant information, I'd like to start with page 2 of the February ones and just acknowledge a donation. We had a nice donation from the estate of Andrea Gale Johnson for $500. And we paid $347 for David Stokes' Family Night Entertainment.
Was there any restriction on that
No.
donation? Very good.
And that's pretty much the more useful information in February. And then if we jump to the March report, there's a few things we need to look at. I'd like to start on page 2 again and go through the expenditures. We had no donations in March, but we paid $300 for Steve Keller Family Night. Jean, Andrew Dickman, and Jeffrey Pocat both had a part in the Celtic celebration. And then we transferred $2,200 from this account into the general fund for summer reading program, and that was approved at a board meeting a few sessions ago, I believe.
October.
Okay. And that's it for unrestricted money in March. On the front of the report is a little more information that is relevant for what we need to talk about later tonight, I guess. The audit has been completed, and these are the final numbers that include all the audited results, and if they made any changes, they're in here. The most important news for 2018 was we had a deficit in the operating expense fund of $33,000, and that's on the agenda to deal with probably right after this.
Mm-hmm.
And we had actually a small surplus in the county operating fund of around $7,000, so the net deficit for 2018 was $26,000 negative, and we're going to have a vote on transferring, I assume, to cover that. That's the bad news. The good news is we have right now of this year's operating funds, between the city fund and the county fund, we're at around $633,000. And I looked back a year ago at the same date, and the same comparative numbers were $621,000. So far this year in 2019, we're at $12,000 better than we were a year ago at the same time. We have some significant donations coming in April. You'll see that on the next report, but we have several $1,000s that we've taken in for
Yes.
donation and reading program money, so that'll help a lot. And that's about it for what I can offer, unless anyone has any questions.
You say there's donations, significant donations coming in for the reading?
Yes, for
program?
April. This is March's
Okay.
report.
When you say it's for April,
They were received in April.
right. When you say significant, is there any amount?
Probably around $2,500 to $3,000.
Could that be then put back into the operating fund for the 2,200 we took out?
Well, it'll go
The
into
20
that fund.
Wait, the 2,200 we took out was what we had voted in October at
Right.
one of the meetings to move.
But I'm just saying,
That's kind of replenishing
Okay,
So the
that
20
account. It goes back into the money market account.
the 2,500 will, okay.
Yep.
Any other questions?
okay, thank you, Jim. We will move on to the 4B, transfer restricted funds to undesignated fund balance to cover the 2018 operating loss.
We had an operating loss of $33,236.67 this last year due to health insurance costs. Those costs are being incurred by the library, and what is needed is to transfer funds from the restricted funds into the fund, and the unrestricted fund balance to cover that loss.
Do we have to transfer the gross amount 33, or can we transfer?
No, we
the
need to
net
transfer the gross amount 33. And then we can designate the county fund balance
Being moved to,
being moved to one of the restricted lines under the county.
amount? Okay.
my recommendation, and I'm probably in the minority, is due to the fact that this, we have a shortage due to an event, events that have occurred that were out of our control. I consider this an emergency, so thinking we should move this out of our emergency fund, because that's what you have an emergency fund for. And I would take a portion from both the Library Fund 21 and the County Fund 126, but that's just the way I viewed this.
I do not know if we can transfer the money from 126 up to 121.
Okay, then we would take it all out of Fund 21. But I'm open for discussion.
I should probably know this, but what's the bookkeeping reason we can't just end the year in deficit and take the loss so that's recorded that way? Why do we need to, in a sense, fill the hole at the end of the year? I'm just curious, because I don't know.
Well, I was informed by Carrie that this needed to be done
Okay.
for the bookkeeping part of
Maybe
it.
there's an accounting reason that I don't
Yeah.
know, so.
And you know what, I didn't think to ask that question. I just knew we were going to finish on a deficit, and I didn't think that we could incur that deficit, especially if we have other funds that could fund that.
But that's that's an idea, Chris, because we could have the money come out of the current fund, and then towards the end of the year, that's when we would actually start hitting our deficit.
Are these outstanding bills that still need to get paid? That's maybe the reason?
Possibly. But I honestly, I don't know how the accounting,
Yeah,
act-
I'm just curious.
and I'm not an accountant, so I apologize. I didn't think
Do
to
we
ask that
have to
question.
do this evening? Do we have to address it this evening?
I
as
was
Carrie
told to
is
address this
concerned?
as soon as possible, as soon as I knew the numbers.
Do we then need to, next year, increase our budget for healthcare?
Yes. And I did increase it for this year, for
By?
2019, by $15,000.
Okay.
But you did so because health costs are going up, not necessarily because of the event that happened.
Not necessarily because of the event that happened, but
I guess I'll make a motion, I mean, it sounds like we need to do something. And I agree with moving from the emergency fund for the amount that's needed. I would just ask that, you know, you do your due diligence to follow the Carrie and ask those kind of questions that we've been asking. So.
Right, yeah. I'll second that motion.
From the emergency fund to, where is it going to?
to the undesignated fund balance.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion
A second.
and a second. All in favor of taking the 33,000 from the Library Fund 21 Emergency Fund and moving that into the
Undesignated
undesignated
fund
fund?
balance.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
All right.
Okay. Okay, moving on, we will go to public comment. We have lots of public comment. No, we have no public comment, as we usually do. Library Director's Report. Amy?
Hey, the Strategic Planning Committee has been meeting, and there is a report for the work done thus far in your packet. We have created a mission, vision, and value statement thus far. We are working on goals and objectives right now. If you have any input or questions or concerns, please contact myself. And I want to thank Jesse for serving on that committee with us.
You're welcome.
Just grab sorry, I've got it. The sprinkler system, I wanted to mention that has developed a leak, and we're talking about the sprinkler system that is in the building. It's been isolated to be on the second floor above the reference desk and the computers. Right now, the compressors are holding their own. It's a very, very small, probably pinhole size leak. The compressors are holding up to keep the pressure, but this is something that needs to be repaired. We are getting estimates right now as far as what it will cost to repair and actually get up there to see where it is. Because unfortunately, it's very difficult to get in that area. If you go up there, it's a vaulted ceiling, and there's no roof access to it either.
And it's right above close to the reference
Well,
desk area.
it's the run that's between the staircase and the reference desk and the computers. So it's in that area,
Bringing a scissors lift.
possibly, or scaffolding,
Yeah.
one or the other.
Is it pressure that we're losing, or are we losing any water?
We're not losing water, we're losing pressure.
That's what I thought.
It's a dry system.
Yeah, okay.
It's a dry system. So I just wanted to inform you guys that we are looking at estimates for that project and to see what it would cost to fix that, because that is a needed fix. The update to my progress on my goals and objectives is also included in your packet. I have updated you on those things and included the updated org chart and a report.
On the org chart,
Yes,
would it be possible to put names in there so we know who's doing what?
I think we can. I think we can fit it.
You know,
I'll have
as a
to try.
separate report,
Yeah, I can try.
okay.
I think it should be listed if you're gonna do it that way, rather than try to jam it into little
Yeah.
boxes.
Yeah. We'll see what the computer will
Yep.
let us do.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Let's see. The old self-check machine, that's another issue. We've reached the end of life on the older one. It's 20 years old, and it's done a great job for us. However, Biblioteca, who is our support company that does servicing on those machines, will no longer service that machine. Pretty much because they can't get parts for it anymore. And so we are looking at getting a quote for a new machine. Estimates range will probably be between $20,000 and $25,000,
Give or take.
rough estimate, give or take, if we wish to replace that machine. Otherwise, it's a giant paperweight.
why replace it?
That's a good
How
question.
many people use the,
That's what I was just gonna ask, like, how many people are actually using it?
I have never waited in line
Mm-hmm,
to use one of the self-checkouts,
mm-hmm.
and I use that all the time.
All the time, yeah. There are a lot of people that do use the machines,
Plus, if we-
especially in summer.
Plus, if we don't use it, that will then offset the 30,000 that we have to come up with
Right.
for insurance.
You know, that's something that we would still probably need to see about getting someone to take away the old machine that's not working.
Yeah.
Well, how about the dump?
How about you lift it?
It's very, very, very heavy. Yeah,
Maybe American Recycling would do it as a donation.
maybe.
Yeah.
I have to ask them.
But I think we ought to just not replace it, and let's just see how bad it gets.
Okay.
Well, it's working for now.
It's working right now, so we'll keep it as long as it's working, but if it does break, we can't get it fixed.
do we take account on how many people use, do those machines take account of?
I think I could probably figure it out. There's probably
Is
a
there
way to do it.
statistics?
There could be a stat on, I've never taken a stat on it, but I can probably find out.
Why spend the time doing it? All we have to do is wait till the one dies,
Mm-hmm.
let it die, and then if people start complaining, then we'll know that we're overtaxing the one.
That's true.
But if we have the stat on it, then we have an idea of what our benchmark is, where we started from. You know, we take that out, and then we don't know where we're at. It's not that hard. If I can figure out how to get the stat off of it, I can get off of one and get it off of the other one.
Be nice. I'd like to do that as
I
opposed
can
to waiting
try
until
it.
people start
I can make the
complaining.
attempt to see if I can get the stats off it. I can't guarantee.
I'm just trying to save you some work, but that's okay.
It's just one more stat.
Always looking out for you.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
All right. And then, the statistics, if you got a chance to look at those, we saw some nice gains in March as far as circulation and, compared to January and February programming, we did much better as well. Digital resources are still being used pretty highly, and, so I was surprised actually with the nice jump in statistics for the programming. It was about 500 people more. And I think that had to do with our spring break staycation. So we had a staycation for spring break time. So and that was the last week of March.
Any questions on the statistics? Now we're going to 2 pages,
I didn't mean to.
but it's a little bigger printing.
Yeah,
I-
I didn't mean to, but
That's okay,
that's
no
what
problem.
happened.
Any other questions for Amy on her director's report? If not, we will move on to the library board president's report. For this month, I just want to say thank you to Jim. This will be Jim's last meeting. He is no longer going to be part of our group. And we wish you luck, and if you ever want to come back, and if you want to volunteer at the library, you are always welcome.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to Jim, we will also be losing Al. He has also decided not to re-up. So we are in the process, we will be in the process in the next couple of weeks interviewing candidates for the position. So I want to thank you for your service, Jim. Thank Al for his service. Okay. Any comments on Jim? All right, moving on, we will go to number 8, old business, Monarch Library System Update.
Okay, I will say that, in my report, I noted that, Sarah Gold from Wills came and presented online for us, at the Monarch Directors Council meeting, and we got to learn more about what Wills does. They're a consulting group and also a cooperative purchasing group for libraries in Wisconsin. Family Fun Night is scheduled at Horicon Marsh for Saturday, June 29th from 9 to 1. This is one of 2 system-wide Monarch Library System events that they sponsor, so come and enjoy the marsh. And the state standards program continues with the second group of libraries participating. The first group has gone through totally last year, and this year they will be starting another group. Unfortunately, I missed the cut for our library, but I've been looking at the standards and reading them and trying to compare our library to them. And in reviewing the standards, it seems like some of their numbers are a little skewed as far as what we should have for computers and what we should have for different things. According to the standards for Tier 1, our library our size should have 30 computers for the public, internet stations.
Wow, we don't even have space for 30.
I know. So there's been some questions, especially when the groups have gone through this process, to say, are these numbers really realistic? And that information is going back to the state so they can review their numbers again. Doug?
So what happens if we don't meet the standards?
Absolutely nothing.
Exactly. So I don't think we need to get ourselves in a tizzy.
Nope.
And be concerned about having to spend some
Nope.
money.
Nope.
And those standards are set by people that aren't working every day in the library.
I'll agree with you there. But those are some things that are going on at the state level. And the last thing I mentioned was Sharepoint is a portal that has been developed and is now being used by the librarians. I have access to it. So far, it seems to be very useful in that we can collaborate online with other directors and other staff members that have access to the portal. And we also have access to a lot of informational guides and question answers and those types of things. So that's been really helpful to just have quick access to we can get to without having to go through system to get guides and those kinds of things. So they're already posted for us. And then last but not least, the Monarch Board has interviewed for a candidate for the director position. I haven't heard anything more.
An offer has been made.
Okay. I didn't know if that was public or
Yep.
not yet, but, okay, so we're just waiting to hear back.
Waiting to hear back.
Okay. Any questions on Monarch? If not, we will move on to number 9, new business. 9A, the library basement renovations.
Okay. And this is where Craig will come in from Parks, Rec, and Forestry. I'd like to introduce him. He is the head of Parks, Rec, and Forestry. He'll join us here. And he came to me with an idea of renovating the basement to help parks, and they need space. So this could be a great partnership between us and another department in the city to provide more services to library users and to parks people. Go ahead, Craig.
Well, good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me to come to your esteemed meeting. Does everybody have a floor plan? I know I see some of you have hard copies, some are on computers. Chris, you have yours on your phone? Can you see it? So I have a few extra copies if you want to pass this in case anyone needs them. Well, let me start.
Big copy.
I'll try to keep it fairly quick, and I'm happy to answer questions. But we'll start at the beginning. So the Mutual Mall is the building next door to City Hall, and the city is looking at selling that.
Go ahead.
You're probably familiar with that building as well. So the school district's been in there with Pathways for 5 or 6 years, but for about 25 plus years in the basement, and actually up in the upper level originally before Pathways came in, we hold our recreation classes, indoor classes. So right now, our biggest one is dance class. We have over 200 students in it each week. And we just had our final wrap-up recital at the high school. We filled up the auditorium with audience members to watch their children, grandchildren, siblings, etc. So it's a big program. We also do some fitness classes. We do theater down there. There's been some, like the West Bend dance clubs come in. A number of other things. We've done youth self-defense and this and that. So a lot of our programming is outside, but certainly during the fall, winter, spring season, it's inside. So with the Mutual Mall going away, we need to find some space for our classes. And so we kicked around some ideas, like the school district certainly has been very helpful to us, but they don't have so much space and they're pretty tight. We have a couple buildings out there in the parks that have kind of one room that you we kind of do things, but we also do a lot of rentals in those. And then, so one of our staff members actually said, what about the basement of the library? I said, great question, I've heard horror stories. That's where all the old furniture goes
To die.
and so I'd never been there, so I asked Amy if I'd come and take a look at it, and we did. And certainly there's lots of space. And really my first question was, what do you guys, as a board or staff, or what's your future plans? So maybe it's a very strategic plan. Is there plans for that? Are you gonna develop it into something or not? And we talked a little bit about it, and Amy probably wasn't that excited about the idea. So then we brought in the fire department and the building inspector, because before we took any more steps, we wanted to make sure, is this even feasible? Access, sprinkler system, all those great things, ADA access, two exits, et cetera. And they all said, yes, this is definitely viable, certainly have to do some work on it. So that got us going. So I've been working with Zimmerman Architecture, which you're familiar with. They did your library expansion. Also at City Hall, we worked with them at Loch Lorraine. So they're very good friends of us. They're doing this for free so far. And so our conceptual plan is through that. So we just kind of started and we kicked around some ideas on our level and showed it to Amy and Deb when we met. So now we're kind of presenting to you. I'm really here to kind of explain it, talk about it, give you general ideas, answer questions. We're not here to make any decisions or anything tonight, so I'm sure you have lots of questions. But one other thing that you should know, that our recreation division, so that's part of our Parks Rec Forestry Department, is self-funded. So probably similar to what you do here at the library. I don't know your exact setup.
No, it's nowhere near
No.
self-funded. We are not self-funded.
Okay,
But by state law, we can't charge for anything,
okay.
okay? We are considered self-funded by the city because we get money from the county,
Okay.
okay?
So it's
It's
a little bit different.
it's real different,
So it's a quasi.
yeah.
It's a quasi thing.
When we used to be fully funded by the city, and now we are, I can't say 100%, I'll say 99% funded, self-funded. So that's donations, sponsors, we charge fees for classes, et cetera. We try to keep them lower. You may have heard of the Dirty Ninja Mud Run for Kids. That's put on by our department, and all the proceeds go to our recreation division to keep the fees down for all our classes, and that's been really very successful. So anyways, moving on, so self-funded, rec uses, so if you look at the floor plan, this is kind of, I'll say, the wish list. And so, we're certainly cognizant of needs that the library has, so certainly chime in at any point, but using the elevator or stairs, we could come into a lobby area. We have basically a dance studio, which you see there, and then 2 multi-purpose rooms. We have some storage areas. We have a classroom, which could be an art room. A classroom could be kind of anything we want. A smaller conference room if that's a need. And then we have restrooms, which we definitely have to have. And then we try to set up substantial storage, library storage area as well. So we went down there and looked at everything and asked Amy, do you want this? No. Do you want this? No. Do you want this really cruddy table? No. Do you want these bad chairs from City Hall? No. But there's a lot of library storage, we focus on shelving and things. So we want to be cognizant of that, and this can change a little bit too. I think one of the benefits we certainly could do is try and help clean up some of that too, because I think a lot of it you guys don't want, and it's probably just city stuff there, so that's some things. So this is kind of the floor plan, and I know Amy's looked at least with staff, and they seem to like it, we like it, but you get to reality and cost, so let's talk about cost. To do this full-out plan, it's gonna be more expensive than any of us want to do. So we're trying to break it into phases. So I would say phase 1 right now consists of the dance studio, multi-purpose room number 2, which is on the bottom corner, and the restrooms. We can certainly add some storage or a conference room or an art room. But that's kind of phase 1, and the rest of it would be phase 2. And we're still talking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars even to do phase 1. So it's reality. And so working with Zimmerman, they're trying to give us that's their best educated guess. This is not bid out, this is not refined, this is not really even developed any more than this. One of the biggest questions we had was mechanical. And so we brought Mark in from building maintenance, we went up on the roof, we looked at all the different capacity. And the good news is you do actually have enough capacity within your heating and cooling system to still serve the basement. That probably was the plan originally, but you know how plans and reality work together. So they feel pretty comfortable on heating and air conditioning. The ventilation's a little different. Ventilation also in a public space has to happen, and they'd have to do some work on that. They think they have some pretty good routes, but that's a big piece of it. So it's not like we can just go down there, put up some 2x4s and a drywall and call it a room, and invite the public into it. So, and obviously there's sprinkler system which is down there, I think they'd have to adjust it. There's certainly plumbing and those kind of things, but, so that's what they've been working on. They've come here a number of times and looked at it, so we appreciate their services. So thanks to Zimmerman. So to do phase one, we're still talking a couple $100,000, whether it's 200 or 250 or 300, I don't know. Two ways I see of tackling this is certainly on our end, we have some access to some funds to do a lot of this build out, and also hopefully some access to some donors that would help us with it. I don't have no idea, I'm not asking you tonight as a library board to say, yep, we're committed to it, or we're committed to a certain amount of money, or we're committed to talking to our same donors that we work with, but I think those are some ideas that can happen. And on the expense side, we certainly know a lot of contractors. If you look at some of the examples in town, like the Hub, the coffee shop, lots of volunteer hours and time went into that, so contractors, whether it's electrical or plumbing, we know a lot of people, and even Habitat possibly, could do some of the build out that would save us a lot of money. Some of it's gonna have to be professionally done, you know, mechanicals, I'm not putting that up for you. But, I think we could get some donations like that. So I'm hoping on the contractor side with some volunteer time, we can work that out, and then with some of these donations, some of the other funding sources we have access to, we can make at least phase one happen. Timing's another question, we don't know. Right now, we've been kind of pushing for September 1st opening, just because the Mutual Mall's under, Chris might know it better. I know it's not been closed on. There's a discussion with a developer that they have like 90 days to review it and go through it. And I think they're about 60 days into it. So that could happen, and if that happens, we're certainly on a fast track because Pathways is here till end of June. We have assurances through our summer programming, but after that, we're kind of out there. Now, if that doesn't go through and it has to go through some other process or nobody wants to buy it for a while, it buys us some time. So I don't know that answer yet, but right now we're trying to keep things moving at least in case we need to do some build out during the summer and then be ready for fall program. So
One of the things from our standpoint, we do get money from the county, the capital money, and that has to be matched by the city, and this would be a way, you know, we haven't, the monies we used to get from the county had been going to pay off our loan, so we don't have any. This is the first year we will be getting money, and I think the county has tweaked how they're doing that, but it's probably around 50-some
It's
thousand,
about 53,000.
53,000 that we will get from the county that's considered capital money for capital improvements. So that would be something the library would have to utilize.
But the city needs to match that by 50%.
But see, if Craig is,
Yes.
Craig, you know, you are a city, so
Right.
it is,
So whether that would come from what I call the city, which is Chris, and his pocketbook, or it comes from the city as in our recreation fund or something.
Yes.
There's definitely matchable money there, if that is a possibility.
What do you pay now for mutual?
Right now, we don't pay anything. So there's a couple considerations here as well, and then I'll let you guys ask questions, or we'll continue to ask questions. Operating expenses, certainly. So no matter if you have capacity or not, it still costs money to heat, cool, ventilate, run bathrooms. plus
Electricity.
Electricity, all that good stuff. So operating costs, I see utilities being a question. And then a question of rent. I mean, is it, you know, we have talked about that. We haven't gotten in any of these kind of levels we want to kind of bring to the board, but do we pay some money towards rent, or is that something you guys pay towards? Is there some uses of these rooms, or some different rooms that you folks can see for the library's use? So I know you have plenty of space up here, but is there something you don't have, or you wish you had more of, or bigger? You just mentioned computers, whatever it is. Is there something we can work together on? And the last thing I'll say, I think what I like about the collaboration potential is I think we can bring some more people to the library, because we have a lot of families, and whether that's advertising or for programming, or what I see a lot of times happen, mom brings 3 kids in, 2 go to class, one's 3 years old, they come upstairs and they could use the library and your resources. Plus they're downtown, and kind of this area, I think we can add some more vibrancy that way. But I think that's great collaboration. I think the parking can be worked out. I think access can be worked out. Hours can be worked out. Safety, all those good things we got to talk see that as great possibilities. I don't have all the answers tonight, but that's a great way to start, I think, and let's continue the discussion.
So I guess from my perspective, I'd be interested in some sort of rental piece, whatever that looks like. You kind of talked about one of the uses we had, and we've been talking about it for years about the need for another large meeting space of some sort. So I know we're not set to this blueprint, but like for example, the dance studio and multipurpose room number 2, if that had a retractable wall, right, so it could be opened up, so it could be, rental space for a large gathering of some sort. I can see that, that's where we always wish that we could do that space for, probably more than computers, just because then it's another rental avenue that we can take advantage of.
And that was one of the things a few years ago, the city had made mention that the city of West Bend doesn't have many large venues in the downtown area for conferences and things. So that is a positive.
And by multi-purpose room, it can be multi-purpose, it's a big space. I mean, we don't know what kind of flooring's gonna be in there, obviously, it won't be a dance studio, but,
22 by 45.
they're large rooms.
Would that be large enough if we did what Chris said and had a retractable wall? Would that space be big enough to house like some of our night programs that we,
Family night and things
Yeah.
like that.
or is it still not?
You're looking at,
It might,
it's a giant square, you're looking
Yeah.
at basically 45 by 45 foot square.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's pretty big.
I just
That's
don't
pretty
know
big.
how big.
I would have to do
you
some
spill out, you know what I'm
comparisons.
saying? It's been a
Yeah.
while since I've been.
Carpet tile square, we all walk it out.
Could you talk a
Okay,
little
how
bit,
much-
Craig,
Go ahead.
about how continuous or the use load would be? I mean, if we wanted to use it for programs or rentals, how much, if Parks and Rec met its needs here, given what your programming is now, how much opportunity would there be for other people to use it?
Right.
Sure. Basically, right now, I'd say we're heavy on the Monday through Thursday between 4 PM and 8 PM.
So it would be like daytime that we
Okay,
could.
daytime use.
But that's, like our dance classes are Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So that's the dance studio, but they aren't there Mondays or Thursdays, so that kind of opens up, unless there's aerobics or something like that. The theater, we kind of move it around, so I wouldn't say it's completely blocked between Monday and Thursday, and the more rooms we have, obviously the more access we have for other things. So certainly days, we don't do much at all, really, even in the summertime there. I'd say it's heavy right after school, or 4 o'clock till 8 or 9 o'clock, it's kind of the same hours as you guys go till.
Right.
Weekends, and Fridays are pretty open, weekends we don't do a lot, we'll have some small, like, community groups, the theater group comes in, there's a West Bend Dance Club out of the middle school that comes in, but a little more hit or miss.
Okay.
But certainly we'd want to work through that, so if there's nights you folks want to use certain rooms and it makes sense, that's, yes.
What happens if mutual, the mall gets sold, you have to be out by September 1, and the library isn't available, then what will you do for space?
Well, that's Plan B, C, and D. So we are continuing to look at other locations as well. It's just that when I look at like the #1 program being dance, it's a little harder. Because we have a small, I don't know what it is, 20 by 15 room, but it's got a wood floor, it's got mirrors, it's got little stretch bars. But we have 2 posts in the middle of it, it's about 110 degrees in there. It's a terrible room, but we pump 200 kids through that in 2 days a week. So we could go, I mean, we have Loch Moran, we have a room upstairs. We have Camp Lodge, we could do something in. We could go to Riverside Pavilion, those are 3 that we own. They're not ideal, they're not flooring that works, but on a short-term basis, that's what we would do. But we're still looking for that long-term.
Well, from what I've seen and what I've heard, this collaboration is we spend money. And I would like to see a cost analysis just to see what this would cost us, if anything. That's why I asked about rent,
Sure.
because I can't see us spending money down. I want to see that being utilized, but I can't see us taking existing monies, spending it, and with no return. And it sounds great that we would have, you know, people increasing our attendance at the library, but if we were to put a dollar figure on what that increased attendance would be, if it even happens, we could probably spend that money and increase the attendance some other way. I like the idea. Financially, I don't think it's to an advantage to the library.
So I agree and disagree with you at the same time, because I think it, based on what we heard, the city is willing to spend money. If needed, we can talk about, we have a capital line item to do. Heck, if we do a rental agreement and we say, hey, the way that we're gonna pay for it is we're not gonna charge you rent for 6 months, that's a win-win, because either way, we've had to spend that money. So in the long term, being able to rent this and get a continuous stream of income would be nice.
I
And I
agree,
guess-
if we could have income.
Yeah, yep.
I think it has to be a win-win for both parties.
Yep.
Because obviously you have the space, we're asking you to use it, but again, we want it to be something that works for you guys also. Whether it's, you're saying, well, we don't have any use for that right now, but in 2 years or 5 years down the road, hey, it would've been nice to do that. So I want you to think forward on that, but certainly it's gotta be beneficial financially. So if
Right.
you're gonna put some money into it on the front end to help with one of the rooms or whatever, you do wanna probably recoup that money. And the sustainability part is better, I think. So if it's during each year, it's a rental. I mean, I think there's examples out there of many, many ways we can go that route.
I mean, for me, it's separating the build-out costs to the ongoing rental. So, you know, part of it is we build this out, we figure that out, you know, I mean, if, I'm gonna make it look like we are now the rental agency in this case.
Right,
Now,
we are the
reality,
landlord.
you know, and we are the landlord to this is, you know, would we normally pay for a build-out? No, but yet, I also see the value in some of the things that we can gain as a library, not in the increased attendance and all of that necessarily, keeping that separate out, just using that space and maybe adding to it. And so I think then it's the rental piece to me is not just to cover the utilities and all that, but it's the wear and tear, figuring out who's paying for that. So in 5 years when the flooring needs to be changed out in whatever room, that needs to be figured out up front. And then you know, is that the ongoing piece for the park and rec, all of those different pieces. But, you know, knowing Mutual Mall and seeing the number of cars there when you guys have night stuff, and just seeing the number of increased people trying to get on our wireless, sitting around waiting for their kids. I know that there are gonna be kids with parents coming here to the library at night. And then you pair that with whatever event or, you know, family thing we have going on, I believe that we would see an increased use of the library at that point.
The increased exposure the library is gonna get, being
Yeah.
part of or partnering for this Park and Rec is just going to be fantastic for us, because a lot of people were here, but they all know Park and Rec, the kids go here, but now we're gonna be having those programs here. The exposure is gonna be wonderful, I think, for the library down the road, and we will get through the rent, we will generate the income, because the city wants us to generate income. We are gonna have to put the money up front a bit. But I think we wanted to do this for a long time.
Yeah.
And in terms of the library, and a little bit more of that, it's a community
Yes.
center.
Community
It's
center.
a
That's-
hub of
yeah.
the community that, you know, I'm not just coming here to get a physical resource, maybe we've talked about the digital resource, but this is kind of the place, you know, we've got the park out here, you've got, you know, I don't know, when my kids were little, and, you know, it's like, well, this kid's in swimming lessons, what are we gonna do with this kid? And you find a place to run around, well, there's a lot here to offer. And so I think that's a bonus for us from the library in terms of that.
Do some of your little dance recitals out in the park there.
I mean, they have the theater group in the
Theater
summer, and they're
group, yeah.
outside doing it on
Yeah.
stage, and I think
Yeah.
you can get some early dance practice once in a while, sure.
I'm really in favor of it because we've talked about the space a long time, years, and it's been such a big thing to tackle that we haven't gotten anywhere with it, and the space is there. The location is prime, it is being used, and this seems like an opportunity to make the hurdles that we faced before much less, because we've got a partner to do it.
Yes.
So I really like it. I have a lot of sort of nitpicky questions about which way the door is open and the traffic flow and all that kind of stuff.
We'll do that another
But
time.
other than that, I guess if if our consensus was that we'd like to learn more about it or to look more into it, what are the next steps? What are the first things that we have to figure out before we can make a decision?
I think, yeah, if you folks are interested in exploring the next steps, then I'll talk to Zimmerman and we'll actually start doing some real design. Because this is great, I mean, they did a very nice job, but we also
This is
draw
conceptual.
lines and figure out space. So it's more getting to the details. And then I think I got an email from Amy, some of your nitpicky questions, as you said, which is great, because that's what we want. Why is there only one door, this one, two doors there? And which way, is there a better way for the hallway, or whatever they are.
Yeah.
That's great. And maybe what would be nice is to have one or two reps from the library, and then go along with me and one or two of our staff people and kind of sit down and talk through the actual final spacing. And then we can do some design, and then get some real better costs.
Right.
Once they do that, they get better cost estimates, and then I can start looking at our end and what numbers we can come up with for funding. In the meantime, I'd want you folks to think through two things, is what could you contribute towards a build-out? So that's your capital end of it. And then what would you think would be appropriate for a rental on an annual basis or monthly basis, or however you want to do it? Because those are the two important pieces, I think.
Right.
And then I guess I'd love to come back at your next month's meeting with some much better information, if we can move it out fast and and hopefully provide some answers to all these questions and see where we're going. Because there's a lot more homework to do on my end as well, but I appreciate the interest, so that's
Yeah.
step number one.
It's a
I
big
think
step.
prior to us coming up with a commitment of how much we want to spend, I think it'd be better, or if we could see some estimate of what, say, phase one would be, and then what phase two would be. Because if we say, oh, we're willing to spend 300,000, boy, you guys would really jump at that, I know, because, that would cover almost the whole thing, you can say, whew, we're there. But if we say, oh, we'll kick in 25 grand, then it becomes, holy cow, how do we get the cost? So I think it's best if we get some idea of what phase one would cost and timing, and then phase two and what it would cost. Then we could take a look at it and say, well, wait a minute, if phase one is $250,000, do we want to put in 75%, 50%, 25%? We don't know, because just as you were sitting here and hearing, we got hit with 30 grand this month.
And I think with that, you have to look at how you're gonna recoup those build-up. If we put money at the build-up, is it, through the lease agreement or that whole piece of, is it, we're not leasing it based upon the percentage of time you're using the building. We have rights to use that. If that's our investment of the build-out, or a portion of the build-out, to be able to say, hey, Craig, we need it 10 hours a week, or whatever it is, that's where our investment versus just saying, hey, if we weren't getting any use of it, then I question why we're paying any build-out costs at all. And I think that's where if we can kind of figure out a little bit of return on investment on the build-out cost, then we figure out what do we need to pay our bills and make a little bit of, cash to pay for upgrades or whatever else through the rental lease agreement.
And Amy, when you shared this with the librarians, did they see the space that
They could potentially
they could
use.
potentially
Yes.
utilize?
Yes, and I told them that they could potentially utilize probably the multipurpose rooms and the classroom and the conference rooms. I kind of left the dance studio out of it because of the floor, but yeah, there's potential there depending on what's going on down there.
For rental purposes, so I don't have to do a bunch of math.
Mm-hmm.
What's the square footage you're looking at renting, then, the total square footage?
The square footage of the whole thing, I think, is 9,000. Your base,
Whole thing?
yeah,
Yeah.
not your existing mechanical rooms.
Okay,
I think it's about 9,000 square feet.
so.
So,
And not all of that was originally done for the parks. Some of this was put in for us, or was all this put in for the parks?
Well, it was put in to be shared space.
Shared space, okay.
there's a separate, you see the library storage on the right side, so
Yeah.
that's really for what you.
That's for the library only, but.
And the rest of it's really multi-use for shared use.
Either or.
I'm asking because then if we come up with a rental agreement, we're gonna wanna know the price per square foot. So
Correct.
the amount that you guys are intending to use.
Yeah, and a nickel a square foot is.
Ah, yeah.
Well, the rates have coming down.
Yeah.
Space out there, so, no, we want to be fair, so it's gotta work for both parties. And if
Right.
it's too expensive for us to build out and we
Right.
pay rent, we're not gonna do it either, so.
Right.
Correct.
We wanna make it affordable for both.
The one thing that I see is this is a really good central location. It's not really that far from where Mutual Mall was, so people who went there aren't gonna be taken out of their way. I mean, and that will bring people into the downtown West Bend area.
I also see this being a means to attack some of our goals for the strategic planning committee that we've been talking about. And even though we do stuff like the website and Facebook and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff in the community that people have no clue. And as we're finding out, even as a board member, I had no clue this happened or this was going on, or, so this might be a way for us to
Really
gain more
market.
participation and more patrons just as a partnership. We can advertise for your classes and vice versa, and I think it would be really good.
Any other questions for Craig or Amy? Otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you for approaching us. Thank you for, working with us. It's been a pleasure so far.
Likewise. Well, we will keep it that way. That's what
I guess our next
hopefully
steps will probably be to ask among the board for 2 representatives maybe, who would like to look at the plan more closely and, work with Craig and I on, some estimates and things like that.
That would be perfect. For our own little informal committee.
Yes.
There you go.
Sounds good.
That's good, thank you.
We'll have to bring chocolates next time.
Covered.
Yeah, that's right.
Take it over, great.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Craig, I apologize. We could have moved you up.
No, I told Amy, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Actually, I've been to enough city meetings, that's fun for me to learn actually what goes on at the library. And
We have an opening. Are you interested?
well, depends what the rent's gonna be. I'll stick around too, because I can answer some of your questions after
Afterwards.
topics I made off camera.
Okay.
Thoughts and fun.
Okay, if we're finished with 9A, the whole basement renovations, we'll move on to new business, 9B, and that's Patrons Park maintenance.
I have obtained a quote from Scott's Landscaping to add Patrons Park to our maintenance bill, and it is attached. The proposal includes spring and fall cleanup, spring mulch, and installation of the mulch, as well as mowing and trimming for the season. The cost came to add $800 or $6,400 for the year for Patrons Park. Go ahead.
Have you and Chris been able to come up with someone to,
No, we have not.
You send out how many letters and follow-ups and contacts to people.
Yeah.
And we brainstormed a list of people to contact too. And I don't know, and I feel like the 6,000, it's not really that much money to ask for. I mean, it's nice that we know that number now, so I think it's a little bit more realistic to approach.
And maybe in the future, if we send it out at the end of the year, asking for the commitment for the prior year, because a lot of these places have already pitted their money for where they were gonna go this year. So it's not something we will let
Correct.
fall, and just say we're gonna keep paying for it. We will continue to pursue
Okay.
outside
I did have a
sponsorship.
question to make sure that we're not, and I don't know if we're opening Pandora's box, but I know that they pretty much capped it at the 800 a month, right? Do you feel that that's beneficial compared to just billable hours? 'Cause maybe 1 month they won't need to actually do 800 hours worth of work, right? Or do
Well,
you
the
think it's a
800,
good deal?
the deal is pretty much 6,400 because they put a lot of money up front for like the mulch and the spring cleanup and everything, and then fall cleanup. They spread the payments out over those 8 months.
But that includes like the mulch and all of that.
Yes.
So it
It includes all of that, so,
and that is a if they have to cut the grass more frequently,
It's a flat rate for the month.
right, and so if we have a dry year, they make out, if we have a wet year, we make out. Yeah. I think it's a fair, I think it's a fair amount.
So we need a motion to.
Yes, I would recommend that it come out of the Patrons Park checking account, as we did have a balance of over $39,000 in that account.
What, over 30, oh,
The restricted.
Patrons Park
Patrons
Fund.
Park Fund.
Those were all donations to Patrons Park, so I think it'd be fitting for that to come from there.
Motion to hire Scott's Landscape to provide maintenance.
Provide maintenance and to pay out of Patrons Park.
that's what the money is there for.
Correct.
I'll make the motion.
Joanne, do we have a second? Doug, thank you. Any further discussion?
Does Parks and Rec want to come? Is that more allowed for?
Hey, we have Scott's do the dog park. So.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. I don't think there were any tasks outside of the funding, with the basement, I suppose.
Right.
But that's not us.
And no, actually, Amy, you were gonna follow up on the accounting deal with the transfer of funds on the deficit, so that we understand a little bit better why that has happened.
Okay.
And that was all.
Okay. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, May 21st. Hopefully we'll have new board members. Again, Jim, thank you.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.